Hello everyone, I am Ayhan. I represent Exponent based out of Dubai. Let me just set a timer here for myself so I don't exceed my time limit. So what I'm talking about today is to give you an idea of our journey so far in Dubai, the UTM journey, and basically also talk a little bit about the key drivers that initiated the need for such a system in Dubai, and the challenges that Dubai generally faces as an aviation hub. So what happened? 2015, 2016, Dubai had an influx of basically a lot of hobbyist, recreational, commercial drones that were coming in, and you had basically 4 drone sightings that were basically flight deck reports, which basically airline pilots reported to having seen drones flying in directly in their approach path. So what happens as a result is that the airspace is shut down, and as a result, the cost to the economy is $1 million a minute to the Dubai economy. That's, again, for Dubai, that's basically a lot of negative publicity for its reputation as an aviation hub. There is, an impact on ease of business in aviation, and so they decided to have some sort of system in place that would address this problem. Now, there were 2 ways they could have gone about this. Is one, to have drones banned completely in Dubai, as Abu Dhabi did at that time, or to have a system that could facilitate this. A few other drivers that came into play were basically, the upcoming Expo 2020 and the use of drone applications by various government departments acting as the drivers of these applications, and also private commercial enterprise coming from all over the place, using Dubai as a test bed, a sandbox of sorts to deploy these applications. One of those was the aerial taxi by the German company Volocopter as well, who demonstrated the concept in Dubai last year. And Dubai wants to have a working aerial taxi for Expo 2020 with a point-to-point aerial taxi service, of course, as a technical feasibility concept, but it's there. And so to facilitate all of this, including food deliveries and medicine deliveries and aerial taxis, Dubai needed a system that could address that problem, or that could facilitate that industry now. So when DCAA approached us, the first thing we realized was that we couldn't solve all the challenges of UTM on day one. You can't have all your problems, all your concerns addressed without, as my friend from Unifly said, that you need to have a phased-wise approach, and that's what we did. So we called it UTM 1.0. So what do you want to have in the first implementation of a UTM system? So we started with P1 to P6 approach, phase 1 to phase 6. That's what we want to achieve in UTM 1.0, and that's what I'm going to kind of put up on the screen shortly and take you through all of those functionalities that we were able to achieve with these phase-wise implementations. So, of course, we start with drafting regulations and publishing those to the general public and the commercial operators, publishing no-fly zones, restricted, prohibited zones, and general guidelines of what you can and can't do as an RPAS operator. Of course, we also, Dubai also then started issuing RPAS registration cards, or sort of like a license for your drone as your drone operator. So here is mine. This is my hobbyist license in Dubai to fly a DJI Spark. And then, of course, the next phase from there on was to have some sort of device that would let the NSP, the regulator, track and monitor these flights. So that's when we came up with this transponder. And this is very unique to Dubai, that no other place, to my knowledge, is using a GSM-based transponder of this size and spec that gets assigned to all commercial operators when they register their drone. And all you have to do is basically attach it to your drone, you turn the button on, and it starts transmitting the flight telemetry back to the UTM system. So what you're looking at on the screen here now is an operator's front-end login into the UTM system, where he has a list of all the drones that are registered within that entity. a list of all the pilots as well, with linkages from a single drone, multiple pilots authorization, or a single pilot with multiple drones authorized for that particular pilot. And when you click on a drone detail, you see whether the insurance is valid, whether the registration is valid with the QR license plate code as well, and with all the pilots and the recent flights that have happened using that particular drone. So this on your screen now, I'm sorry about the poor contrast quality on the screen, but what's happening on the screen right now is an operator applying for his flight permission. So what he's doing is he's submitting the start date, end date, start time, end time, min and max height AGL, and the area of operation that he's going to be operating in. And when he sets all those parameters in, what happens is an estimate over there gets generated for that particular flight. So it tells the operator how much of a flight bill should he expect for that particular flight. So it's by calculating the volume of airspace that you'll be occupying for the duration of time and the proximity to various critical airspace, for example, those factors act as multipliers or metrics into what your flight estimate or bill gets generated as. So that's all good. You have the flight plan, and those blue rectangles and trapeziums and squares over there, these are basically, the UTM system will automatically calculate where the flights are happening in the next 24 hours, and they start popping them up on the screen. And once the operator is live, you see those, them operating as these drone icons here. And to address that airspace incursion problem, to begin with, that was the driver of the system, was we set in our system now horizontal and vertical separation parameters between unmanned traffic and the manned traffic. What that means is basically we're saying all unmanned traffic, around the airports especially, should maintain a separation of 5-kilometer horizontal and 5,000 feet vertical separation to manned air traffic. And the system will dynamically then calculate if these parameters are being breached. So if a pilot violates the airspace and gets too close to aircraft within those parameters, we generate an alert that gets sent as an SMS to the pilot. We generate an alert on the portal itself. We generate a text message to the responsible personnel within the ATC as well, so they get alerted before the pilot is, of course, about to breach the airspace. So this kind of works as a dynamic dashboard that facilitates, separation of manned and unmanned traffic in the Emirate of Dubai. What about the operators themselves? So what we're doing for the operators is giving them access to the portal as well, because then they get situational awareness to where the manned traffic is operating. So they get a live ADS-B feed piped into their flight page, where they see where other aircraft are operating, where other drone operators are operating, and we give them the ability to recreate their flight in 3D in real time, right? So while the regulator as well, they can monitor your flight in 3 dimensions, in 3D, real-time plotting, and so does the operator. What we also give them is a comms module. So here, there's a comms module where you can send custom messages to the regulator, to the NSP, or they can send you custom messages that come as an SMS and also on the system as well, on your flight page. What that does is you can basically communicate any urgency or emergency contingencies that you might have and pass those on to the ATC. Of course, all flight telemetry, because of this device, gets transmitted every 2 seconds. So you get the pitch, roll, yaw, altitude, speed, heading, lat long of that drone, and the distance covered, the speed that it's operating at, all in real time as well. So RTCM, what we call is RPAS Traffic Comms Module, Communications Module. So this is specifically kind of like like having an air traffic controller talk to you, but they can also then publish temporary flight restrictions and set a timeline on those TFRs, and those get published right there in the orange area here in Dubai. So you can set a timer on it and say we want to temporarily close this airspace, and that gets published and pushed out into the operator UTM system as well, and they get notified of the restrictions in that particular area. Any operators operating at that time will also get a notification with their green area of authorization turning red immediately as well. Okay, so far what I've talked about is cooperative UTM. So this is an operator that wants to comply willingly and put on a tracking device on his drone and let you track him. In return, you're facilitating his commercial operations. But what about the rogue guys, the guys who don't want to comply with regulations and want to cause trouble for the airports and fly in restricted airspaces? So that's when I started with saying that you can't solve the problem on day one, but now we've gotten to that point where we have a legal basis for all commercial operators to operate within, a legal, technical, commercial basis that serves their function, that serves their business. And now what we've done is, starting with the airports, to demonstrate the capability of detecting drones with two of the leading detection vendors, D-Drone and L3. And what they're doing now is putting this RF network, sorry, I skipped a slide, I should go back. So they've put up these RF antennas around the airport. So what they're doing is detecting drone activity around the airport, and what that's in turn doing is feeding the data into our system. And we can do three things now. We can then basically detect. We can then verify or validate, and then we can basically discriminate between an unauthorized and an authorized flight as well. So telling the ATC what's good and what's bad traffic in the air, and perhaps future integration with law enforcement that would then allow them to mitigate that threat eventually. So far, again, we talked unmanned air traffic management, but in Dubai it's been a bit unique in the sense that they are and this was borrowed a bit from the Madrid GUTMA conference this year, where they called UTM a unified traffic management system instead of just unmanned. So what we're doing in Dubai is we put these tracking devices on hot air balloons as well. And we are tracking hot air balloons in real time, of course, and those guys go up to 4,000 feet altitude. And given the network propagation in Dubai is pretty fantastic, you've got 100% coverage, we're able to track hot air balloons as well. So which is quite nice to have, where you're now having hot air balloons, drone traffic, and just in October 2018, which is this month, we tracked the skydivers as well. So they got a tracker attached to their wrist with a Velcro strap, and they were doing skydiving all across Dubai, and we were tracking and monitoring them over the UTM system through the GSM network. So this is not only reliant on the GSM network, the system. We have other forms of tracking devices that we can input into the system, such as the ADSB receivers as well. And we are obviously moving on to having direct flight control integration, or just using your mobile app to transmit your flight telemetry into the UTM system. Now, extensions into the UTM system. What do we have? We have an analytics engine as well now that allows Dubai to, on a daily, weekly, or a monthly basis, then study the impact of unmanned traffic on various stakeholders within Dubai. So what they're doing is assessing the heat maps of various types of operations that are happening. Where are government operators operating? Where is commercial operators? What types of jobs are they performing? Whether they're more surveillance flights, or construction monitoring flights, or aerial filming flights, for example. And then, what type of violations get created on day in, day out? So do we have proximity to air traffic violations, or do you have breach of boundary where operators are going outside of the area of approval, or are they breaching altitude? Are they going higher than they applied permissions for? So all of that data, and then the registry data sets as well. How many pilots applied this month? How many flights happened this month? How many flights people applied for and didn't actually fly? All of that data is now being kind of analyzed in the system to better plan and manage the airspace, the unmanned airspace, and unify this overall and study the impact to various stakeholders as well. So that's the analytics engine, and currently Exponent has two implementations live, one with the DCAA and the other one in Italy with ENAV, who is the ANSP, national ANSP in Italy. And they are using the system for beyond visual line of sight flights for a period of 1 year starting October this month. And so our system is in place in these two places. And with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much for your patience and time, and have a great event. Looking forward. Thank you.